That's always something that is easy to forget to do. And today we're going to talk about Persistence Plus, and we're joined by a couple panelists to help us do that. We have Cecilia Lee. Cecilia is the Director of Strategic Engagement for Persistence Plus. So she will be obviously telling us all about Persistence Plus and can answer a lot of questions that people might have. And Christopher Deck is here from Moreno Valley College. He's an educational advisor, and he has experience with Persistence Plus in that his students and Guardian Scholars have been receiving nudges with Persistence Plus for a while now, and he can speak to their experience with Persistence Plus. And then again, I'm Simone Turek with John Burton Advocates for Youth. So, as you all know, the goal of the Beyond the Safety Net initiative, which all of you who are joined with us today are a part of, is really to improve the capacity of housing providers to support current and former foster youth and homeless youth in applying for, enrolling in, and persisting in college. And Persistence Plus, which, as you guys know, which we've been talking about now for several months, provides nudges to support youth in college. And this was something we really looked into as a tool to increase persistence. And, this is something that you all mentioned just was such a significant challenge, persistence being such a significant challenge. And we know when we, look at the data, you're not alone. Your youth are not alone. They're not the only ones struggling with this. This is a huge issue. And so, as I previously shared, as part of the initiative, we'll be funding Persistence Plus to reach all of your youth in college. Initially, those who are enrolled in or intending to enroll in college for spring 2018 will be connected. And then we'll talk later about how youth who might come into your program after January of next year will also be connected. And we'll be providing Persistence Plus for you from this January 2018 until the end of September 2019. And we'll talk more about these types of details later. But for now, I'd like to ask Cecilia to kind of help familiarize everyone with Persistence Plus.
Thank you, Simone. Hi, everyone. This is Cecilia Lee from Persistence Plus, and I'm excited to be here with you today and tremendously excited for this project and for the potential to help the young people that you serve transform their lives through post-secondary education. And so I want to start out by sharing these comments that two students, both foster youth, shared on the Persistence Plus platform last year. You have one young person who feels that he has no one to talk to and doesn't know how to move forward in college. And you have another young person who's reflecting on how far he's come, that he went from being destined to fail to moving toward achieving his lifelong dream of graduating from college. So our mission is to support students like these two on their journey through college, and the types of challenges that we address are things like everyone else in college knows what they're doing except for me, or I feel like I don't belong here. I'm too embarrassed to ask for help, or no one gave me the roadmap or told me how to play the rules of the game of college. And so the Persistence Plus model, next slide please. The Persistence Plus model applies behavioral science to help students build the mindsets, behaviors, and habits for college success. We leverage text messaging to meet students where they are and engage with them through the channels they're already using the most. We're applying strategies from behavioral science to give students small nudges that have a big impact. Behavioral nudging has been effective in helping people to save more for retirement, to conserve energy, to go to the polls on election day, and to get a flu shot. And we at Persistence Plus apply those strategies to the college completion problem. So by sending the right student the right nudge at the right time, we can foster lasting changes in their mindsets and behaviors that lead to college success. So in a minute, I'll show you some more examples of what this looks like. But first, I want to talk a little bit about our impact. Next slide. We're working with tens of thousands of students at colleges across the country. And in experimental trials with randomized control groups, we've seen anywhere from 2 to 10 percentage points increase in persistence the next term. And we've also been able to measure changes in student behaviors as interim success metrics. And so students who receive our nudges were 5 times more likely to seek out math tutoring. And engagements with students who are working with a college success coach, we've seen the surprising trend that 25 to 30% of students who are MIA with their coaches, not responding, are actually responding to text messages from Persistence Plus. And so they're able to receive support in that more low-touch way. Next slide. We began partnering with foster care counts in 2014 to bring this approach to support the college success of foster youth. So foster care counts enabled us to work together with foster youth and college support programs to adapt our model for the needs of this population. So we were able to speak with students, speak with advisors such as Chris, and really understand the needs, concerns, challenges, experiences of this population, and be able to customize and design nudges specifically for them. And so we began a pilot at UC Riverside and have since expanded to several other colleges. Next slide. Through this engagement, we've served over 600 foster youth who have received a total of 45,000 nudges. And we found that they've been very engaged with this type of support. So 3 in 5 students respond to the nudges, and they've responded a total of over 4,000 times. And I want to share with you some of our early outcomes with foster youth, which we see as promising. Next slide. We found that students who use Persistence Plus are more likely to continue in college than students who choose to opt out. So a 10 percentage point higher fall to spring persistence and 14 percentage point higher fall to fall persistence. So for instance, 54% of the foster youth we served persisted to the next year in college compared to just 40% of students who had opted out and were not receiving the nudges. And so we were able to collaborate with our college partners, Chris and other colleagues, to be able to do this data analysis. And we're really gratified to see that our approach appears to be having an impact for foster youth. Next slide. So I want to talk a little bit about what the nudges actually say. All the messages that we send are grounded in behavioral research, and they are designed to address both logistical and psychological barriers to college success. And so the nudges are designed to do things like help students to set and follow through on their academic goals, or to navigate steps like priority registration or financial aid renewal. And the nudges are actually timed and synced to the college's academic calendar, so that students will be receiving nudges based on important dates at that college. For example, FAFSA priority renewal or priority registration. The nudges help students to develop a sense of belonging in college, so that they feel as though they are have a strong identity as a college student and belong in the college community, which we've seen has a strong linkage with retention and graduation. The nudges help students to seek help from campus resources and dispel any stigma that they may feel about seeking help. And so to help them realize that it's a normal and expected part of the college experience to go to tutoring. It doesn't mean that you're not smart or that there's something wrong. That's just what successful students do. Or it might encourage them to talk to an advisor, especially in that time prior to registration when they need to have those important conversations. Nudges might encourage them to talk to a professor outside of class or visit office hours, something that they may be feeling intimidated to do, but help them realize that that's something that's expected and it's part of a journey to being a successful student. And then finally, to help students connect their studies to their personal goals and values, and to keep in mind that graduation will not only benefit them, it will benefit their families and their communities and help them make a change in the world. Next slide, please. So our model is what we call automated yet personalized. The nudges come from our intelligent software platform, so they don't come from a person who is texting them on the other end. but there are several ways in which these nudges are tailored to meet a particular student's needs. And so the first way that we personalize is based on who students are, based on demographic information that we'll be asking you to provide to us. So if a student is a first-generation student, they might get information about resources for first-generation students on their campus, or might get a snippet of advice from another first-generation student. And this is all based on studies showing that when students can hear about can hear about the experiences of other students similar to them, and especially hear about challenges that they've gone through and overcome, that is actually linked to greater persistence. We customize the nudges based on where the student goes to college. So we know that you all in your programs are serving students who may be attending a variety of different colleges, all with different resources on campus, different dates and deadlines, and different campus contexts. And so our system is designed to be able to customize those nudges based on where the student goes. So if they're going to LA Trade Tech or SF State, they might get a nudge that is timed with important dates and deadlines at those colleges, or they might be told that the tutoring center is in such and such building in this room, and other campus-specific information such as that. And then a third way that we personalize nudges for students is based on how students are responding. And so this is a way in which we can actually integrate the real-time challenges and experiences of students to determine what kind of messages they might receive. And so some of the nudges are questions, not all of them, but some of them will ask them to respond about their current motivation level or their current challenges. And a student who reports that their biggest challenge in college currently is procrastination might get a different message later on down the line than a student who reports that their biggest challenge is feeling like they don't belong in college. And so that's a way that we're able to use the student inputs in order to target the messages to their specific needs. Next slide, please. So to help this all become a little more real and help you visualize what this looks like from a student perspective, I want to show you a video. It's about 3 minutes long, and it's going to help you get a sense of nudging in action. And it portrays two student profiles. One is a returning student pursuing a STEM degree in radiology, while the other is a former foster youth attending college for the first time. And you'll see that these two students receive different messages based on who they are and how they respond. So I hope that that gave you more of a sense of what students can expect from the nudges. Please do share with other colleagues in your organization if you'd like to help them understand it better as well. And there is some like motivational music that I think we couldn't hear that goes along with it. And so before I turn it back to Simone, I just want to talk about, we often get the question, do students like getting these messages? And we're happy to be able to say yes. And I have a slide coming up that, yes, thank you. In surveys conducted by our partners, over 90% of students say that they recommend the nudges for all new students. And then here I want to share some of the feedback that we've heard from foster youth in California. And so what we hear is that it helps them to feel supported and motivated to access helpful information about college they wouldn't have known otherwise, and to know that they're not the only ones on campus going through what they are going through. So I want to stop there and just say again how thrilled we are to be able to work with you and to support your students, and we are really looking forward to it and to learning a great deal as well.
Thanks, Cecilia. I'm sorry about the sound on the video. You know, we could recognize it. You probably couldn't hear it, but we weren't sure how to change that. And I didn't want to kind of risk messing up the whole webinar and potentially losing people in trying to get the sound going, because I knew that it was just music and not talking. So
no worries, the music is not important.
So now I want to just pause real quick. I meant to mention this in the beginning. You know, we are going to do a question and answer session at the end of the webinar. And so I want to encourage everyone, I'm sure you guys have some questions about Persistence Plus or about this process of getting up and running with it that you have. So please enter those into your questions box. There's a questions box on your control panel on the right-hand side of your screen. You can type the question there and hit send, and then I'll be collecting them and I'll read them out at the end, and we can answer them. You can send them now, you can send them, you know, toward the end, it's fine either way. But I'd like now to turn it over to Chris Deck, and Chris is going to talk a little bit about his experience with Persistence Plus with his Guardian Scholar students.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much. And yeah, so I coordinate the Guardian Scholars Program, Foster Youth Support Program at Reno Valley College. And, you know, since we've been using Persistence Plus, you know, for the past two so years now, I've been able to get some perspective on it and really talk about it from, you know, a staff perspective in programs, and also, you know, some of the feedback that I've been hearing from students in our programs. And so just to start off with, you know, something from our staff perspective, the main thing that I really like, it's obvious, but it's very important for us, is the model in which these messages are delivered through text message. We obviously email our students, we talk to them in person, but we know just how, you know, young people are communicating. It's through text, it's through their phones, and that's really important for us to have that other way to be communicating with them. It really increases our contact with them. From my perspective, we're a program here on this campus of basically one. It's me, and we have a couple peer mentors that we just hired this semester. And so what that means is, like, when I'm unavailable, or if I'm in meetings or whatever happens, and, you know, I might miss students, and that's obviously very, like, frustrating, but, you know, having Persistence Plus is sort of like we're in constant contact in a way with our students, checking in with them, making sure that their needs are being met. And the other part about that I really like is that, as mentioned before, the messages are like contextualized to the specific campus that the student attends. And so when there's like a suggestion that, you know what, if a student, you know, students tend to do better in math when they seek tutoring, they not only will get that message, but they'll get the message that, you know, tutoring is available in this specific room on this specific campus. So they know exactly where to go to get that help. And that's really cool, and, you know, just really more direct than a lot of other supports. From our student perspectives, what I've been hearing from them is that the main message that when I ask them about, hey, you're getting these messages, how's it going? Do you like them? The feedback I keep hearing from one informal poll basically is that, the largest benefit from it is that there's a feeling that someone is cares about them, cares about their success, is watching out for them. And, a couple of them have said even, something that you don't always realize, but that this is not a lot of times something that they've had from their own, obviously, parents or family, not someone there like asking how's it going in school, like they don't feel so alone in having to figure it out themselves. So that seems to be like a consistent, message that comes across. And when we first started the program with them, to be honest with you, it took a little while to get them, used to it, being like, hey, where's this coming from? Are you texting me? It's like, no, I'm not texting you. It's coming from this, from this program. And just kind of explaining it to them, they definitely started to understand it, and I think they're getting just really used to it now. So another part that we really enjoy is that this texting is not just texting in a vacuum by itself. It provides opportunities for in-person discussion. So if students report, like, if they're texting with this service and then they report that they're facing food insecurity or transportation issues, things like that, then, the text will refer them back to me, and then we can talk and have a discussion about here's how our program can step in and help out with these issues. And I've had a couple of situations like that. I had a student, for instance, who is kind of a pretty independent student, and so she drives, she has her own car, but she got into a car accident and was like, what, I don't have a car now. How am I going to make it to school? She came, she said, I got the text about, are you having transportation issues? She's like, yeah. So she came in and talked to me. And so we talked about, the bus. I'm like, did you know you have a free bus pass by attending our college? And she was like, yeah, but I don't know how to take the bus routes. I don't know how to get around. And so I was like, oh, of course, so we actually went on, we looked at the bus routes together, we figured it out. And so, it's just little things like that, I look at it as little things. For our students, it may not be such a little thing, that really help out. And then pretty much, another issue is that I've had students report that, feelings of like being overwhelmed. I had a student that was having to move out of her grandmother's house because for any number of reasons, and she didn't have anywhere to go. So she was responding to the text like very, in a very depressed way, and the system knows this and, can notify us and let us know. So we had a conversation with her about that, and we gave her referrals to transitional housing programs in our local area. And it just provides that extra help. She didn't come straight to me with that problem, but she responded by text. And that's why I think, this is Persistence Plus for us. The way I look at it is, it's another piece of the puzzle of trying to keep our students motivated and engaged and continuing on with their coursework. At the end of the day, that's what it's all about. So that's been my perspective.
Thanks so much, Chris. That's really helpful to kind of hear it from someone who's had experience, kind of direct experience in the setting where youth are receiving the nudges. And I believe Chris is staying on for Q&A. Is that right, Chris?
Yes, I can.
Great. So if people have questions for him, kind of just how this, any specific questions about how this went for his students, please feel free to submit those questions as well. So now I'm just going to talk a little bit more specifically about how this is going to work for this cohort of programs, your youth in your programs. So at first, I just want to talk about eligible youth, kind of who can receive nudges from Persistence Plus. So youth who are enrolled or intend to be enrolled in an eligible institution of post-secondary education, will receive these texts. So first, let me just address what an eligible institution means. So we're using the guidelines that are set by actually the California Student Aid Commission for schools that are eligible for students using their Cal Grant and their Chafee Grant at. And so these are guidelines that apply to schools where 40% of undergraduate students, 40% or more of undergraduate students are borrowing federal student loans. So what this means is, all the public universities and colleges are eligible institutions. So all the community colleges, all the state schools, all the UCs are all eligible, considered eligible schools. And then for schools who meet that, 40% of their undergraduate students are borrowing federal student loans, there's some guidelines that they have to meet. And so these are, the private schools, includes, a lot of these vocational programs, and the kind of minimum guidelines they have to meet is they have to keep their graduation rate above 30%, and they have to keep their loan default, their federal student loan cohort default rate below 15.5%. And you can check on specific institutions on the CSAC website, and on the slide, there's a list, there's a search engine where if you click on that link on the slide, it'll take you to a website. You can both look at the list of eligible institutions, you could look at the list of ineligible institutions, but you can also do a search for a specific, is this vocational school eligible? Some of them will be, some of them won't be. But like I said, don't even bother searching for community colleges or CSUs or UCs. Those are all, they're not subject to these guidelines, and those are all considered eligible institutions. So that's one thing. The next thing, kind of when we're talking about eligible youth is, and just kind of to go back to this first one, so youth who are enrolled in college are obviously, can receive these nudges, but youth who intend to enroll. So right now you might have youth who are not currently in college, but they're intending to enroll for the spring semester. So count them in, and then another thing is that students can continue to receive nudges even if they disenroll. So if you have a student who is in college, they start to receive nudges, but they drop out. It doesn't mean that they have to stop receiving nudges. Persistence Plus basically will continue to nudge them, continue to text them, unless the student says stop. So the student can absolutely text them, say stop, I don't want to do this anymore, and that's fine. But a lot of students have found it actually really helpful and motivating to continue to receive the nudges, even if they have drops, because they might be needing some encouragement about, re-enrolling the next term, for example. And sometimes staying plugged in kind of keeps you plugged into that student community. And, even if your program, because we'll talk about, information later that we'll need from you, but even if your program, shares that this youth has disenrolled, again, Persistence Plus will continue to nudge them unless the student asks for it to stop. So it's kind of really putting the student in the driver's seat here. Next one is just students can continue to receive nudges even if they change their mind about enrolling. So kind of similarly to dropping out or disenrolling, if you provide us your list of students, which includes someone who's not currently in school, but who plans on being in school in the spring, but then that doesn't happen. We know sometimes these plans change. These things happen. That's okay. Persistence Plus will, send them nudges unless the student tells them stop. And then the next one, so students who transition into your program after the start of the semester can also receive nudges. So we know that there is turnover. We know that the nature of transitional housing is not every youth is going to be in that program forever, and you're going to have new youth. And we know that you can't always anticipate when that's going to happen. So, once you provide the information of who your current youth are that are enrolled or who are intending to enroll, then the semester will start. They'll be receiving their nudges, but then there will be a follow-up point where we give you an opportunity to send any new youth, the information for new youth to Persistence Plus. So that way, if we miss them during that first information gathering, there's a follow-up point. You can also, if they come even after that follow-up point, catch them from the start of the next term, because each semester we'll be gathering that information to make sure that all of your youth are getting included. So they may not get the nudges completely immediately, but they'll be caught either at that follow-up time or the following term. I think that's it for eligible youth. So, we gathered from you information about where your youth are currently attending college. It was pretty amazing. If you look on the screen here, I'm just kind of putting in the community colleges right now, you can see in gray, those are all of the community colleges that across your 18 programs that youth are attending. And then here in blue, you have the CSUs. In orange, you have the UCs. And then in green, you have a couple of the private institutions. And so this is over 50 colleges. This is, I think, 59 different institutions of higher education. I mean, that's pretty miraculous. I thought when I looked at this list, I was like, wow, this is a big list. And this is something that we gathered so that we could, share it with Persistence Plus now, because as you can imagine, as they make all of these customizations for each school, they have to do a lot of legwork to get that information from the schools that they don't already have information on. And so we wanted to give them as much of a head start as possible in gathering that information. So thanks everybody, for getting that information to us so that Persistence Plus could get a start on gathering the information. And I know there's just a couple programs, a couple of you that have not got me your colleges. Please do so as soon as you can. And then timeline. So kind of in January, youth will start receiving nudges. This will go through the spring semester and the summer semester. Then they'll get them for the full year of 2018 through spring and summer of 2019. So you're probably, wondering what does summer look like with these nudges? And I think Cecilia can probably elaborate on this, but from what I've understood from talking to her, really the summer nudges reinforce youth's sense of belonging as a college student and, excitement about returning to school in the fall if they're not in summer school, which we know most of them aren't, as well as kind of prompting them to register if they haven't done so, and then kind of surface any challenges that may be preventing them from re-enrolling. So they actually find the summer nudges to be very helpful. We'll be winding down at the end of September 2019, and then, if programs choose, are really into this, and their youth are really into this, and they want to continue for their youth to receive nudges, you could, but it would be at your own cost. So you'd have to talk to Persistence Plus about what that might look like cost-wise. Or, another option is that John Burton Advocates for Youth, we say we really want to continue to offer this for this cohort of youth, and maybe we go apply for more funding. But as of right now, that's not something that we can guarantee. So we're giving you an end time of September 2019. And so kind of what does this mean next steps wise? So kind of how are we going to get up and running in January? So, the first thing is gaining consent from your youth who are enrolled or who are intending to enroll in January in order to pass on their information to Persistence Plus, and in the same way that if they consented on their phone when they downloaded an app, they're consenting for their information to be shared for the purposes of that app. So same thing, except there's a middleman, which is us and you. And so, we do, they're adults, they can consent to this, and you just want to get their consent before you have someone start texting them, obviously. And so we don't need, copies of these consent forms, but, obviously this is something that you want to do so that they know what's going on and they're consenting to participate in this. And then each of your programs basically would gather the information that we need from youth, which we'll talk about in just a second, which, consists of phone number and school and some other details that Cecilia will mention in a second. And then you would send that to me. And then I'm going to compile everybody's and send it to Persistence Plus, okay? And then they'll work on the kind of program level and the youth level and campus level customization, and we'll be good to go in early January. So gaining youth consent. So there's a flyer that that Persistence Plus has that we've provided to you that you can absolutely use, to kind of inform your youth about Persistence Plus. It's a pretty simple flyer. I put it in the handout section of the webinar. So if you go to your control panel I think there's a section that should just say handouts, and you uncollapse that section, you should be able to download it directly. I did that so you have it, immediately. Like, you don't even have to wait for an email from me following up, with the flyer. You can, after you get off this webinar, if you want, you can print that flyer out or send it out or whatever you want to do with it. But I will follow up with an email sending it as well. But being that that's the first step, I wanted to make that immediately accessible for you because we are on a bit of a tight timeline here. And then we have two options kind of for gaining youth consent. One is just to print out a consent form and, old-fashioned way, have them sign it. And we'll have a template that we'll be sending you. And then the other way, which I'm guessing might be easier for people, I don't know, is to just have them do an online consent on their phone, which we can forward you a link to, and then they can just kind of almost do like a DocuSign type scenario where they're clicking yes, I consent, kind of in the same way that they would with any other app on their phone. So next, I'm going to ask Cecilia to jump back on and talk a little bit about what this information is that they need, and then a little bit about Persistence Plus's privacy protection.
Thanks, Simone. So the information that we collect, I'll just tell you a little bit about what we request and then why we're requesting it. And so, first there's basic information like the student's name and obviously their mobile phone number so that we can text them. And then there's some demographic fields that we request in order to be able to customize for the students, as I discussed earlier. And so these things such as their birth date, gender, ethnicity, race, transfer status, full-time, part-time status, first-generation college student, those are all inputs that our system uses to be able to better target nudges to students. So for example, if a student were a transfer student, they might get nudges about making sure that all of their transfer credits have transferred to their current institution, or about adjusting to life on campus as a new transfer student. As I mentioned before, a first-generation student might get advice from another first-generation student. College name, so thank you again, Simone, and all of you for providing this list of colleges. And as I described, students will receive information that is specific to the college campus that they're on, so dates, deadlines, resources, locations, and so forth. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about the fact that we request a staff member emergency contact. And so this is hopefully not going to come into play, but in the event that a young person were to text something concerning, that they're, for instance, thinking of harming themselves or someone else, or that they're in real crisis, we want to have a mechanism in place where we can be able to contact you and let you know of that. And so what we would request is that every organization designate a staff member who would be available to take that call and to provide a cell number in case it's not normal business hours. And again, I want to reiterate that this is extremely rare, hopefully will not happen, but we always want to have that process in place just in case. Next slide, please. And so then I want to talk a little bit about privacy and security, which we take extremely seriously. And so we follow all industry best practices regarding system security. And we only transmit student information via our secure server. And so, so never through any other means. And obviously we would never use student information for any other purpose other than providing service to these students. And then we do have a protocol in place where we only request the minimum amount of personally identifying information that we would need to serve students. So we don't want their social security numbers or their addresses or anything like that would be extra information that is both not relevant to us and also would be personally identifying. And then finally, our system is secure, has never been compromised, and so we really take seriously keeping student information private. And then there on the bottom, there's a link to our privacy policy in case you'd like more information on that.
Thanks, Cecilia. So this is Simone again, just jumping back on. So this is something that Cecilia and I talked about, kind of, you know, we want to make this as easy as possible, obviously, for your programs. And we were trying to think, like, what's the simplest way to do this? And one thing is the way that Guardian Scholars has gained consent by their students has been a pretty kind of, they streamline the process by what they do is they include the Persistence Plus is essentially part of their program. So when they have youth that come, students that enter their program, and there's, you know, here's the information about our program and kind of here's our agreement, the fact that their information is shared, Persistence Plus is built into that kind of whatever that consent is that they're signing to be in their program. And so one idea is in the future, you know, as you onboard new, or as you do intake with a new youth, you could include in your kind of program guidelines or, you know, program agreement, whatever it is that you call it at your program that youth sign when they enter, you could include that, you know, when you're in school, we share your phone number, your name, you know, this information with Persistence Plus for participation in this app. And then that way it would eliminate this additional step of having them, you know, sign something or consent to something in the future. So that's one idea for you guys. We can kind of talk about this, you know, as we go along later, since, you know, none of you have it in your program guidelines right now, but it's something that might be good to consider to make this simple as we move forward. And we thought that, you know, not only would this kind of make this simpler, but it also, you might have like a higher likelihood of consent, so you aren't going to run against youth being like, I don't want to do this, or you know, maybe it could even be an additional, I don't know, a motivator for enrolling in school. And it also kind of explains up front, you know, what it is when they're entering your program. So that was one idea that we had. And then the next slide, I think we did get a question about this. So I'll just I'll read the question now and then answer it with the slide. But there was a question that says, are there any notifications that the provider will receive regarding the students? And so, oh, it looks like I didn't change to the next. Oh, and I'm just, you know what it is? I'm skipping ahead. So I'm going to jump ahead and then go backwards to just not be confusing here. So kind of as you see on the screen, you know, due to the dynamic nature of the nudges, you know, being that each student is getting slightly different nudges based on, you know, who they are, what school they attend, how they respond. Persistence Plus can't really provide any standard, here's what your youth are getting to programs, because there would be several different renditions of it. So what we'll do, because we want you to be plugged in, you want to be plugged in, I'm sure, is Persistence Plus and John Burton Advocates for Youth will host a webinar once per semester for the providers and Beyond the Safety Net, kind of to share what Persistence Plus is learning from the nudges. So, you know, just examples of what this might be is like, you know, this percentage of students feel that they have a strong belonging in college, or this percentage of students say that they don't know anything about tutoring. So kind of understanding what we're hearing from the students, and it might also help you kind of target your case management and address issues that you may or may not know that are popping up, not maybe specifically in your program, but kind of we can look at these trends as, you know, overall, this is what's happening with this population. And I think it'll be pretty interesting. So I'm going to just back up to that last slide. So explaining Persistence Plus to youth. So again, there's a youth flyer on the control panel handouts you can download. I'll also follow up with it. But we also wanted to just give you language, you know, kind of what is the elevator pitch for youth. And that's in that box here. This is what Cecilia sent us as kind of here's a way, kind of a simple way to explain Persistence Plus in conversation. So that's there. I won't I'll spare you reading it, but I'll also send you a copy of this presentation so you have this later. So now I am going to, I believe that is our last slide. Yeah, we're going to go into Q&A. So we have a little handful of questions here, so I'm going to just jump right in. The first one I wanted to address was questions about kind of eligible institutions. So is there a way we can double check to make sure that our local colleges and community colleges are on the list? So I just want to, I probably didn't do a kind of a exhaustive enough job in really explaining this because this is really important to understand. You know, the community colleges and the state schools and the UCs are all eligible institutions. So you don't even have to check that your community college is on the list. You're good. Any community college is good. They are not subject. The public schools are not subject to those guidelines that I mentioned. What those guidelines are about catching those for-profit, you know, institutions where youth tend to get in great debt. They don't tend to get anything out of the schools. They don't tend to, you know, come out with a job. You know, they're not the schools we want our youth to go to, and they kind of prey on students, unfortunately, and kind of promise a lot and deliver very little. And so that's why, you know, the state does not let Chasey or Cal Grants be used at those schools, because it's kind of a wasted investment of that money, and it's also a way to deter youth from attending those schools. And so in line with that, you know, eligible institutions for your youth to get Persistence Plus, all of the community colleges are good, CSUs and UCs. If your youth is at a private vocational school or something, just check that list, go to that link that's on the slide, which again, I'll send you the slides after the webinar, but go to that list and you can either just do a search by entering the college name, or you can actually look at the eligible and ineligible list and see if you can identify the school. On the screen that, and I'll just go backwards for a second, on the screen that had all the schools, I think there was just 3 that were the private. It looks like, okay, there we go. 3, yeah, Brightwood College, Marymount California University, and Unitech. And so I think there was maybe like 7 private schools that were sent in the SurveyMonkey link that I sent out. And so, you know, if you were one of those people that entered one of those schools and you don't see it here, that means it didn't come up on the list. So I did a search with the you know, private and vocational schools that were sent to us to see which ones qualified, and those 3 were the ones that came up. So that's one way, is if you're one of those people and you don't see it there, it's likely not an eligible school. I'll go back here and we can go on to our next question. It says, Chris spoke a little about this, but I was curious. The sense that they are being cared for is one of the things that probably helps them respond back. Are the students aware that it is a computer system that they're responding to, and does it matter to them? It's a great question. Chris, are you great?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you know, at first I was a little bit concerned about that, like if they would think it was just automated, and you know, what does that really mean for them? But like I said, we kind of explained that it is a system, it's automated, but personalized, and I think that's what's different about it. The fact that they can respond, and it's two-way communication, and it responds dynamically, you know, based on kind of what they say. So yeah, it's a computer, but it doesn't really feel like a computer like a lot of other things do. And so from what I'm hearing from students, I don't really hear that it's impersonal, or they don't like it. Most of them just kind of say that it's just kind of, you know, the fact that it exists, the fact that this is for them, is showing that there is someone out there that cares. That's what I've been hearing.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for answering that one. So this is another really important question, because I know this is something that does come up. How will the youth be able to update their phone number since their numbers change so often? So we'll be, so first thing is that every semester we will be gathering this information. So obviously it would be caught there, but if it changes, you know, mid-semester, which is obviously is common, they would email Cecilia directly, and you can see her email on the screen there. But that's the same thing with if they change schools. So same idea. So those are two really key things, is, you know, their phone number and their school. So if either of those things change, you can email her for a more kind of immediate, you know, not response, but, you know, changing of that information. But other than that, it would be caught by the, you know, semester updating of information.
And I also want to add that if a young person were to say, oh, hey, I go to MVC now, they would be switched over, like if they texted into the system. Great. So if they say that my number's changed, then Persistence Plus responds accordingly. That's great. Wonderful. And then another question, is there a minimum number of units that youth must be enrolled in to get Persistence Plus? So there's no minimum number of units required. It's, you know, just, are you a college student, or are you, you know, intending to enroll in the next semester? So there's not like a 6-minute unit minimum or anything like that, no. Another question is, on average, how many nudges do students get per week? Cecilia, do you want to answer this one? Sure. So students get an average of about 2 to 3 nudges per week, but it varies based on a few factors, including how frequently they respond. But they can expect several nudges a week.
Thanks. Next question, who do we notify if a youth drops out? So we're, like I said, we'll be gathering kind of updated information from you each semester and providing it to Persistence Plus in order to make sure that they have the most up-to-date information about the students receiving the nudges. So you actually don't need to inform us immediately if your youth drops out. What it comes down to is, like I mentioned before, Persistence Plus will continue to nudge those students, even if they disenroll from school, until the student chooses to stop receiving those. So we do want them to continue to get whatever support they're feeling that they're getting from those nudges or encouragement, unless they don't want them anymore. And if they don't want them, you know, they'll stop. But we do want to give them the option to continue to receive them. So basically, if the youth disenrolled, they would continue to receive nudges either until they said stop or until the end of the initiative, 2019. And then that's the same thing with, you know, if a youth leaves your program. So just to kind of answer that, piggyback on that question, like if you have a youth who is in school and they drop out of they leave your program, they exit your program, but they're still a student. That doesn't mean just because they left your program that Persistence Plus is going to cut out on them. They'll continue to receive those nudges, regardless of where they're, you know, living, until either they say stop or until the end of the initiative. Let me go back to the screen here to the questions and just make sure if I'm missing any. Let's see. When will Persistence Plus be available for Northern California community colleges and CSU's UCs for use by youth? So I'm guessing, and feel free, the person who entered that, to clarify, but I'm guessing you don't mean like through this project, because through this project it's going to be available in January to all of your youth, regardless of where they're in school, as long as they're at an eligible school. But I'm guessing, are you maybe talking about when will Persistence Plus be partnering, like through foster care counts maybe? So I'll turn that over to Cecilia to answer.
Yeah, we are continuing to expand the colleges that we are working with, and particularly with a focus on the foster youth population. And so we're actually going to be beginning some partnerships with some additional California colleges soon. We would love to be working on a system-wide basis, but we aren't yet.
All right, thanks, Cecilia. All right, let's see. I think that's all of our questions. I think we got to everything. Let's see, we're almost at 2 o'clock. So I think we'll go ahead and end here. But thanks everybody for joining us. And I'll be following up with the youth flyer, the youth consent form, the slide deck, and anything else that I need to get you. But that's all I can think of right off the top of my head. So kind of as we end, I think the first thing to kind of leave with is to really start, getting the word out to your youth who are enrolled or who are intending to enroll for this coming term, and talking to them about Persistence Plus so that you can then kind of quickly execute a consent with them and gather the information that you need. And I'll just, before we end, I'm gonna just go back to our next step slide one more time, because I think I failed to actually say out loud what the dates were. But we do need this information from you that Cecilia went over by November 24th, so that we can get it to Persistence Plus before November, really. Before December, excuse me. And so I'll be also sending you a spreadsheet that you'll be using to input that information and then send back to me. And so that's all. And thanks everybody for joining us. Have a great day.